Dan Schneider, exposed by Drake Bell for being a little bit inappropriate whilst on set for most of the kids' shows, including Drake and Josh, iCarly, and other hit shows just like that, has recently come out to say that he will be suing the producers of Quiet on Set for defamation. Now, obviously, Quiet on Set was the show that basically Drake Bell went on and exposed everything. Literally, it was so revolutionary. And recently, obviously, via TMZ, Dan Schneider here plans to be suing for Quiet on Set. But in case you're not up to speed with everything that's gone on so far, here is a little catch up of what has happened thus far. Quiet on Set, and it was all about how it was basically the brutality of being a child star in that kind of environment and how predatory it could be at times. And Drake Bell exposed Dan Schneider for SA. And how he was treated whilst he was on set of Drake and Josh and other shows, and how other child stars such as Ariana Grande, Jeanette McCurdy, and other Nickelodeon child stars were treated in a very similar fashion. So, this came out after Drake Bell obviously kind of blew the whistle not too long ago, but he then did become a part of this Quiet on Set show, which premiered on March 17th, and it was a 2-part series which spanned over 2 nights. And Drake Bell, you know, basically exposed everything that went on with him when he was a 15-year-old child on set of these shows. So, just to kind of get you up to speed, let's take a little look at this clip from E! News, which gives a really good breakdown on everything. It basically summarizes the show in a nutshell.
Wasn't dealing with anybody on the shows or anything, right?
It was a child actor.
On one of our shows?
Yes.
Drake Bell speaks out about the sexual abuse he suffered at the age of 15. The former Nickelodeon star appears in the new documentary Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, which investigates the experiences of former child stars who worked on Nickelodeon shows produced by Dan Schneider. According to Today.com, Drake tells his story for the first time publicly, reportedly revealing he was the unnamed minor in the 2004 sexual assault conviction of acting coach Brian Peck. The former child star reportedly says in the film that the coach abused him over the course of months at his home, allegedly turning Drake against his father, who had become suspicious of Peck, and ultimately his mother and stepfather. According to Today, Drake says his separation from his family meant he often spent the night at Peck's home.
So you can obviously see how Drake was, you know, horrifically groomed into this kind of situation by his coach and things like this. And, you know, Dan Schneider was also in the background doing things like this as well.
Drake and Josh alum reportedly says that one morning, quote, "I woke up and he was sexually assaulting me, and I froze and was in complete shock and had no idea what to do or how to react." He says he later revealed the abuse to his mother, who called police. According to court records viewed by E! News, the acting coach, now 63, was convicted of 2 charges that included lewd act upon a child 14 or 15 by a person 10 years or older, and oral copulation of a person under 16. He served over a year in prison and was made to register as a sex offender. E! News has reached out to Brian Peck, Dan Schneider, and Nickelodeon for comment, but has not yet heard back.
Now, Dan Schneider did actually speak out regarding the documentary, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, and we're going to take a little look at that because you'll see why.
A statement to NBC News, a Nickelodeon spokesperson says, quote, "Now that Drake Bell has disclosed his identity as the plaintiff in the 2004 case, we are dismayed and saddened to learn of the trauma he has endured, and we commend and support the strength required to come forward." As far as the workplace allegations against Dan Schneider addressed in the documentary, a spokesperson for the 58-year-old previously told E! News he understood what they were going through and he was their biggest champion. The fact is, many of the kids on these shows are put in the untenable position of becoming the breadwinner for their family and the pressure that comes along with that. It continued in part, that is why there are many levels of standards, executives, lawyers, teachers, and parents everywhere all the time, on every set, every day. However, it is still a hard place to be a kid, and nobody knew that better than Dan.
Now, obviously, that is what was said by Dan's spokesperson, but it doesn't cover up the fact that these horrific things truly happen, and obviously, it just glazed over the surface. Drake's father also spoke out about the odd behaviour that went on from Brian Peck in particular, and how he started to kind of, obviously, he tweaked on that, like, these weird things were happening, and, you know, he saw these telltale signs, and, you know, it's quite heartbreaking to hear Drake Bell's father's side of this, and how, you know, he was, because of these grooming and, you know, because of the things that were going on, how he was kind of extradited from Drake's life. You know, he was pushed to the wayside, and then these things were just, you know, he was the only person that was kind of able to see what was happening and able to step in, and he was, you know, very much removed from the picture. But here's what Drake's father had to say on the matter.
About the business and what you got to watch your kids and this and that. So I was very attentive. All the other parents would be seen and not heard, which I would never interrupt anything, but very rarely sat in the green room. I'd always be offset somewhere where I could always keep my eyes on Drake. And unfortunately, I started seeing Brian start to just hang around Drake too much. And it didn't set well with me. Drake would be in the dressing room or something, and in would pop Brian and just touch Drake. You know, do things that, wait a second, what are you doing? Drake can put that on himself. And the thing is, this is in front of people. Then he'd maybe walk over to Drake and be feeding him some lines or whatever and put his arm around his waist, put his hand up on his shoulder and kind of run it down his arm and things like that. And this would happen routinely. Was just always uncomfortable.
So, you know, just because of how out in the open it was happening, it was just happening in front of his dad, in front of, you know, stage crew and all the rest of it, and because of how out in the open it was almost kind of like, well, I'm doing nothing wrong because look how out in the open I am. Anyway, you know, it wasn't just Drake Bell. Obviously, Drake Bell is the person that's come forward. He's the person that's kind of blown the whistle on this and has exposed the harsh truths and the horrible truths surrounding this situation. But it's also come to the surface since this whole allegation has come out, and how, not even allegation, this exposure's come out. These clips of Ariana Grande when she was on Nickelodeon, and how she was also sexualized by Dan Schneider in certain clips, especially around her feet. Apparently Dan Schneider, was, you know, Jeanette McCurdy came out, I think it was back in 2022, to basically, she was given the warning signs before all of this happened. She was saying that he's a bit of a wrong, and he's a bit odd, especially when it comes to feet. There would always be like, he loved feet. It was very weird, you know. So she was trying to kind of expose him before all of this even happened, but she wasn't so brazen about it. But you know, you see these clips now with the context of what's gone on from Drake Bell's exposure, and you can see how these clips are utterly horrific.
To get your whole big toe in your mouth? Check this out. Sometimes I I wonder if you can get juice from a potato. Come on, give up the juice.
Be really cute and coy with that, because you're a good spy. All right.
How would she be cute? Like, how would you do it if you were being cute? Oh, that is cute. Can you do that? Can you be as cute as Steve?
So close. So close, but yet so far.
Everybody takes a step away from me.
Pretty cute, Trev. Pretty cute.
Because your uvula is that swingy thing in the back of your throat right here. Is it possible for a teenage girl to drink water upside down? I'm thirsty. It's not possible.
Okay, I think that's enough. We get the point. That was, you know, with the context, and when you have it kind of consolidated into that, it's uncomfortable to watch. But that was just kind of one or two, or I think 3 or 4 clips of many that is just kind of shows the kind of things that were going on and things like this. But what's really messed up is obviously it's taken Drake Bell a hell of a lot of confidence to come forward and expose these things. You know, it takes a lot to say that what's gone on with you and what you've experienced, and to be so public and vocal about it, especially against a conglomerate like Nickelodeon. You know, they are, alongside Disney, the biggest kids network in history, you know, and you've got the likes of Ned's Declassified, the cast of Ned's Declassified, on TikTok Live, making jokes about it, which is really messed up. You know, he's come forward, he's been incredibly brave to be able to expose these truths, relive those brutal memories, and then you got the likes of other people who didn't clearly experience that, as far as I can tell, and you know, they're not in support, in solidarity, they're more just kind of poking fun. And when you hear this, it'll make your blood boil. Take a little listen to this.
Daniel, we told you never to speak about that. Get back in your hole, Daniel, and give me your holes.
And then Drake Bell did tweet out saying, Ned's Declassified, this is wild, laugh it up guys, laugh it up, give me your holes, really. And it's disgusting behaviour.
Sorry, we shouldn't joke about this. We really shouldn't.
This is awful. Why are we doing this?
Because this is about us. Listen, our set was not like that. And no, it's awful. The Drake Bell is that's crazy to hear. Not talking about this anymore.
No.
Guys, we can't joke like this. Jesus, guys, we're sometimes humor helps us move through things.
I woke up and he was sexually assaulting me.
Now, to say humour gets you through things, that just kind of adds to the issue, because you're just laughing at a matter that is so horrifically serious, and that happened to your, well, not co-star, but, you know, it happened under the same umbrella. Your show was on the same network, so you're, like, you know, you should be coming out in solidarity about these things. Like, no, what happened to Drake is utterly horrific. These things should never happen to child actors, should never happen to actors, full stop, least of all children, but instead it was poked fun at. But another part of the whole kind of issue was obviously Drake and Josh were part of the same show. You know, Josh Peck was co-stars with Drake Bell. And Josh Peck did not publicly respond to the issue. And there was huge amounts of backlash for Josh Peck, people being like, how can you not come out in solidarity? You know, how dare you? All of this stuff. But Drake Bell did respond to all of this, because apparently Josh Peck did privately message Drake to give him some, you know, words of encouragement, words of just to show support.
Drake Bell responds to backlash over Josh Peck's silence after the airing of Investigation Discovery's Quiet on Set docuseries. The Drake and Josh star takes to social media to set the record straight on his friendship status with his former co-star. Drake shares a video message on TikTok telling followers,
"Hey, what's up, guys? I just want to clear something up. I've noticed a lot of comments on some of Josh's TikToks and some of his posts, and I just want to let you guys know that this is really, processing this and going through this is a really emotional time, and a lot of it's very, very difficult. So not everything is put out to the public, but I just want you guys to know that he has reached out to me, and it's been very sensitive, but he has reached out to talk with me and help me work through this, and has been really, really great. So I just wanted to let you guys know that and to take it a little easy on it."
Drake's video comes after fellow Nickelodeon alum Josh recently posted a cryptic video on the platform, calling out someone he hasn't spoken to in a while.
"If I haven't talked to you since 2023, take that as a sign that you don't exist to me anymore. You got sprayed with the raid. Bye. See you in that bar."
Users commenting under the video took the opportunity to ask if he's talked to Drake and questioning his silence amid Bell's appearance in Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, in which Drake revealed he was the unnamed minor in the 2004 sexual assault conviction of acting coach Brian Peck.
So, basically, that was that. I know there's been a bit of a back and forth, bit of a, whole thing with Drake and Josh where they weren't exactly best friends as it was portrayed on screen. So I think it was kind of in response to that, people's comments and things like this. But the support just keeps flooding in for Drake Bell, as even Nancy Sullivan, who played Drake's mum in the TV show Drake and Josh, and she went on to say on an Instagram post, "They weren't my real kids, but I'll always love them. It broke my heart into a million pieces just to hear how much Drake was holding inside while we were working together. I was both devastated and proud seeing the man he's grown into sit down on camera and bravely tell us his truth. Past abuse doesn't define us, and it has no right to rule our lives. I know that putting this burden down will free him in so many ways. I hope memories of the joy that he had on our show will someday greatly overshadow the pain. Sending love to Drake for a deep, healing, and rich and beautiful life ahead," which is just beautiful, especially in this time. And this is the kind of response that you would hope to see, is the way that, things are handled, and the way that these people coming forward to show solidarity. And I think that this is just the start, to be perfectly honest, of potential people coming forward to talk about these allegations. Drake could kind of open up open the floor for people to come forwards with their stories and be like, look, it's okay for people to come forwards and, talk about these things and these horrific things that you went through and that I went through, and not me specifically, but talking as from Drake's point of view, and hopefully it can show people that it is okay to step forwards and to talk about their truths. And I think I'd hope that it would allow people the opportunity to, should they feel they need to. Anyway, obviously Dan Schneider, everything's fired at him. This whole docuseries is just, everything is on him. All the focus, all the spotlight is on him. Well, he spoke up on Dan Warp. So if you don't know who Dan Warp is, it's he played Tebow on iCarly, and he did a podcast-style interview with Dan Schneider where he spoke up about the accusations that were made against him and everything. And just straight off the bat, you will see how this guy's response is just, you'll see.
Hey, it's Boogie. I played Tebow on Nickelodeon's iCarly. I got a chance to watch the Quiet on Set program, and I reached out to Dan to see if it was something that he'd be willing to discuss. I'm pleased to say that he said yes. Dan, how are you?
I'm okay. I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about what we saw over the last 2 nights.
I'm really glad you're here because I believe this is important.
For sure.
We've got a lot of things to unpack. But before I dive into my list of topics that I'd like to discuss, is there anything you'd like to start off with?
Absolutely. Watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviors, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret. And I definitely owe some people a pretty strong apology.
So straight off the bat, an admission. Like, he's literally just admitted to everything that he's been accused of, which, after watching the show, you know, there's no way that he couldn't deny it, and, you know, he had no choice but to admit to his wrongdoings.
Let's talk about the massages.
Okay.
Watching the content yesterday, it was disturbing.
It was wrong. It was wrong that I ever put anybody in that position. It was the wrong thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologize to anybody that I ever put in that situation. And even additionally, I apologize to the people who were walking around Video Village or wherever they happened, because there were lots of people there who witnessed it who also may have felt uncomfortable. So I owe them an apology as well.
Yeah. Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. From what I saw, not cool.
No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if I can cut right to the chase, let me just say.
Now, what I like about this, Boogie, within this interview, I'm not going to play the whole thing because, you know, I feel like I don't want to take all the content, but he has no bullshit when it comes to this. He calls him out, rightfully so, for every wrongdoing. He holds him accountable for every wrongdoing. He doesn't give him an opportunity to worm it out. He's like, look, writer's room, that's not cool at all. Talk to me about that. Basically setting the precedence that you're not going to worm your way out of it. It actually happened. The floor's yours. Which I really, really liked, because it would have been, quite easy for him to sit down with Dan Schneider and be like, was this the case? Was this true? Which gives him an opportunity to worm out of it. But fortunately, no.
No writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room, ever, period, the end, no excuses. Most TV writers, comedy writers have been in writers' rooms, and they are aware that a lot of times there are inappropriate jokes made and inappropriate topics come up. But the fact that I participated in that, especially when I was leading the room, it embarrasses me. I shouldn't have done it. And I can tell you why it hurts really bad for me.
Now, this is what kind of frustrates me about this interview. It's, it's like throughout, it's like, this is what I've done wrong. It embarrasses, like every single time the response is, it embarrasses me. I shouldn't have done it. I wouldn't do it now. I should have been a better person. But this is how it hurt me. And it's like putting the spotlight back onto yourself and then almost like, look, I'm feeling sorry for myself, which, in hopes that the audience would then feel sorry for you, which kind of deflects a bit of the blame for what you're being accused of, which, frustrates me so much, because it's like, no, you did these things, these horrific things. Like, you're not a nice guy,
Which a good boss should never ever do. So sorry, and let's talk about it. And
now, you've written hundreds of episodes. Thousands of jokes have been told.
Yeah.
But currently where we are, some people think that some of those jokes are inappropriate for children. What do you think of that?
All these jokes that you're speaking of, that the show covered over the past 2 nights, every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny, okay? Now we have some adults looking back at them 20 years later through their lens, and they're looking at them and they're saying, I don't think that's appropriate for a kid show. And
now, this is the one thing during this whole interview, and it's why I wanted to kind of like highlight it within this video, is, there's a lot of things, even with like Disney movies and things now, where, with cultural appropriation and, times changing, what was funny back then for a kid audience is not funny now. and you can't get away with what was said back then versus what's said now. It's just moved with the times, and things don't age particularly well. Like, for example, on Disney Plus right now, there are some kids movies that come with disclaimers at the beginning being like, this involves cultural appropriation, it includes adult humor kind of things, like, things that were acceptable back then that aren't necessarily acceptable now. So, that's the one kind of talking point during this whole interview that I thought was like, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, yes, they're not appropriate for a kid audience now, but back then, it would have been deemed to be somewhat close to the bone, mind, but acceptable. Now, the last part that I want to talk about is, this part gets very emotional for Dan Schneider. He gets emotional within the answer, whether that's like, true or not. I'll leave that for you to decide. But it talks about Dan Peck, or Brian Peck, sorry, and how he was hired and stuff like this, and it gets very deep, and it talks about the predatory side of things.
Okay. All I know is I was never banned from the set.
Yep. The darkest part of this series discussed child predators. Now, I want to make sure that we clear a couple of things up.
Okay.
Brian Peck was not hired by you.
No, I did not hire Brian Peck.
This was a Tolan Robbins production?
Yeah. And when Drake and I talked and he told me what had happened, I was more devastated by that than anything that ever happened to me in my career thus far. And I told him, I'm here for you. What do you need? Which Drake mentioned in the show that we watched last night. And next, I heard that he went to court when this guy was being tried, Peck. And when Drake walked in, he saw 50 people sitting on the side of the courtroom supporting Peck. A lot of them pretty famous. Of course, Drake was devastated that happened. And even more disappointing, 41 of those people wrote letters for Peck, character letters, praising him for who he was and asking for leniency, and they knew that he was guilty. They knew he had confessed to some degree, and they still did this. That's baffling that adults would do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people know this, but Drake's mom, a lovely woman who I stay in contact with this day, she came to me at the time and she said, Dan, I'm not good with words like you are. And would you help me with my speech for the judge? And I said, of course. And I did. And he ended up going to prison and serving his time. And yeah, that was probably the darkest part of my career. And here's the kicker that I really don't get. After he got out of prison and was, to my knowledge, a registered sex offender, he was hired on a Disney Channel show. I don't understand that.
Now, we're going to stop it there. Obviously, if you want to go and watch the full uncut version, go over to the Dan Warp YouTube channel and you can see the full episode. It is called Dan Schneider Talks About Quiet on Set. Now, moving forwards, people are asking, what is happening to Dan Schneider after all of these misconduct accusations? So, with Dan Schneider's name back in the news, his arrest status and accusation of misconduct against him come back into discussion among fans. Dan Schneider worked as a producer for Nickelodeon from 1994 up until he was accused of misconduct towards studio employees in 2018. During that time, Schneider served as the creator of many hit series including The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly and Victorious. Anyway, moving forwards, obviously we've got all of this stuff, and then following the release of the Quiet on Set series, Viewers have questioned what is happening with the former Nickelodeon executive Dan Schneider. To date, Dan Schneider has only ever been accused of abuse and misconduct during his time working for Nickelodeon. Aside from the complaints first brought up when he and the studio parted ways in 2018, there have been no official lawsuits, convictions, or investigations against him, meaning he has not been arrested. The Deadline reported highlighted complaints of abusive behaviour by Schneider throughout his time at Nickelodeon. The New York Times detailed allegations of the executive being verbally abusive to co-workers 2018, which included tantrums and angry emails. Additionally, anonymous comments addressed numerous requests for shoulder and neck massages, and he would reportedly text child actors outside of work hours as well. So the allegations were pretty explosive. Obviously, you know, this whole thing was enormous, and when it first came out, Dan Schneider went on a podcast and said, he held his hands up and was like, whoa, I'm really sorry for all of my inappropriate actions. Yes, looking back, it doesn't look very good, but I apologise for that. Well, he's since gone full 180, 360, no scope, and he has decided that now is the time that he's going to be suing the producers because it's defamed him. He is completely defamed because of these allegations. So that's exactly what he plans to do. So the explosive docuseries Quiet on Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV, features Dan Schneider, a former Nickelodeon producer who launched a defamation complaint claiming that the show was a hit job. Several testimonies from Dan Schneider's former workers accused him of fostering a poisonous work atmosphere, even though the docuseries never accused him of being a child sex predator. Alright, so that's important. He was never actually alleged as anything further than just kind of creating this weird and creepy atmosphere whilst on the set. Schneider first apologised and recognised his inappropriate actions when the docuseries premiered. That's exactly what we were talking about. He featured on the podcast and he very openly apologised, got very emotional about it. But he said, watching over the past 2 nights was very difficult. Me facing my past behaviours, some of which are embarrassing and that I regret, and I definitely owe some pretty strong apologies, Schneider said. It was wrong what I did, and I put everyone in that position. It was wrong the thing to do. I'd never do it today. I'm embarrassed that I did it then. I apologise to everyone that I ever put in that situation, he added. So there he is. He's admitting to what was claimed against him within the docuseries. That was it. Job done. That was it. Everyone kind of forgot about it. Well, he's since gone 180, and he said, however, in a recent lawsuit obtained by by Variety, Schneider claims that the docuseries falsely implied that he approved of the sexual exploitation of minors. In a statement, his lawyers called the series a hit job. Alright, there's Dan Schneider there, back in the day, and here are some of the stars of the shows that he was on. So, quote, Quiet on Set portrays Schneider is a hit job. While it is indisputable that the two bona fide child sexual abusers worked on Nickelodeon shows, it was likewise indisputable that Schneider had no knowledge of their abuse, was not complicit in the abuse, condemned the abuse once it was discovered, and critically was not a child sexual abuser himself. But for the sake of clickbait, ratings and views, or to put differently, money, defendants have destroyed Schneider's reputation and legacy through false statements and implications that Schneider is exactly that, the statement said. Now, when the show aired, there was no say of Schneider ever actually participating in those acts. Yes, there were other people, and they were rightfully outed, but Schneider was only ever touted to have this kind of creepy work environment where he'd have people walking around giving him massages, and he would just demand foot massages or whatever on, and he had these like weird foot things where, you know, we've all seen the Ariana Grande stuff where she had to get her feet out and stuff. It was very odd behaviour. And there were some very overly sexualized scenes, even though these guys were kids at the time. So, but it was never said that he was participating in those acts. But for the sake of the defamation case, I think it carries more leverage for them to say that. Anyway, Schneider added in a statement that he will not be held accountable for the crimes he did not commit, even though I don't think he was actually accused of anything. But recently, the docuseries Quiet on Set highlighted mistakes that I made and poor judgment I exhibited during my time at Nickelodeon, most of which happened decades ago during my early career as a producer, working on the shows for Tolin Robbins Productions. There is no doubt that I was sometimes a bad leader. I am sincerely apologetic and regretful for that behaviour, and I will continue to take accountability for it. However, after seeing Quiet on Set and its trailer and the reactions to them, I sadly have no choice but to take legal action against the people behind it. In their successful attempt to mislead the viewers and increase ratings, they went beyond reporting the truth and falsely implied that I was involved in or facilitated horrific crimes of which actual child predators have been prosecuted and convicted, Schneider said. Even though, which to me is a very backwards kind of statement, because it's like he acknowledges the things that did go on, rightfully so, which were actually highlighted within the show. But when I watched it, I never thought that he came off as a predator. Alright, I don't think the show ever actually portrayed him in that way. Yes, they portrayed him in the creepy kind of ways that he would do things, which, rightfully so, he's even acknowledged to. But I never thought of it and came away and thought, wow, dude's a predator. No, obviously the other people were, but I never thought of him as one because it never kind of really led me down that path. But anyway, I have no objection to anyone highlighting my failures as a boss, but it was wrong to mislead millions of people to the false conclusion that I was in any way involved in heinous acts like those committed by child predators. I owe it to myself, my family, and the many wonderful people involved in making these shows to set the record straight, he concluded. Alright, so that's kind of his take on it now, is he is going to be suing for defamation. Now, I have a feeling, and this is just this isn't actually what's happening, but this is just how it comes across to me. It comes across to me like he wanted to sue for... He had a bee in his bonnet because he'd been outed. Alright, prior to Quiet on Set, there was never any kind of him apologising for his actions. Only when he was called out for it and held accountable did he then apologise. There was no accountability for himself, no past reflections. He was almost sorry because he'd been caught out, not because he was truly sorry for the actions. That's how it came across to me. And I think that case in itself was not strong enough to sue for defamation. So they've kind of they've gone balls to the wall and they've gone like, right, you have accused me of being a child predator, so therefore I am going to sue you for defamation because everything else happened because I've already admitted to that. But this part, no, I never admitted to that. That's wrong. False allegations. I'm suing them. Even though I don't think that was actually the case. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. I found it really interesting that weeks after, there was then that you'd expect the defamation case to almost be reactionary. It's almost as if like he slept on it, it's festered, and then suddenly, boom, there's a defamation case at your front door. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. While you're down there, be sure to jump scare the hell out of that like button if you have not already. Subscribe if you're new, tickle my little bell so you get notified whenever we upload. And until next time, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed. I cannot wait to see you in the next one, and I'll speak to you later. Peace.